I got intercepts over London, and at that time, the one was a Dornier, and one was a one. Let me see. It was a 190 Focke-Wulf with one bomb, and I couldn't catch him. The Dornier was intercepted by another aeroplane, and I was called off. I was called off the flight. The idea of night fighting was being vectored onto an aeroplane until your radar operator could pick up the blip, and that's when you said, "Okay, I've got the blip. Thank you. Just keep monitoring us." And I think at that stage, weren't many airplanes. They were just carrying out nuisance raids. In fact, all the night fighter squadrons were on the offensive, just making a nuisance of themselves and flying over Europe. They weren't involved in the buzz bomb offensive. They were still involved in making it known to the Germans that their night fighter fields were under surveillance from the RAF. Not that it was easy to shoot them down, because they had a means of diverting from one aerodrome to another. They switch the lights on, get the bloke to land. He'd have to land in the dark and switch him off once he'd taxied in, and he'd have to find his way to his own dispersal. Well, of course, the Germans suffered a lot of self-crashed aeroplanes, landing in the dark and taxiing in the dark. Even we had a wing commander who was he was an Australian, a fellow called Keith Hampshire. He was a pretty brave guy. He wasn't terribly popular, and somebody taxied out one night on a scramble, and they ran into a Mosquito in front, and he said, "The next person," he put his foot down, "who has a taxiing accident will be posted from the squadron." Well, who do you think had the next taxiing accident? So he posted himself for about a week. He went off for over a week on a holiday, came back. He wasn't very popular, but by God, he had plenty of guts. I remember talking to his radar operator one night, and they just shot down a Ju-88 the night before, and this guy's name, this operator, radar operator, he had an Irish name, Conlon, Tommy Conlon, and they got onto something. They were vectored onto this, and he directed Hampshire to get up behind this thing, and Hampshire got up behind it, and he said, Tommy said, "I can tell it was a bloody Ju-88, but Hampshire was very careful about identification, and he went from this side to that side, underneath it, flew above it. He got into the turbulence of the aeroplane. The German was flying straight and level. He must have been a real twit. And poor old Tommy, he just about fidgeted himself in his seat. And his explanation was, "It's a Ju-88, shoot the bloody thing down." And, you got to give Hampshire he was a prick of a bloke at times, but you had to give him full credit. He made certain, so he shot it down. And Tommy was very relieved. Near the end of the war, it was very difficult to get an interception. So we were employed on going to certain places and beating up places. I remember one night I went down to a place called Pocking, or way down there, right deep in Germany. The war was nearly over, and landed at Juvencourt near Paris, and whizzed all the way down there, and rendezvoused with some other Mosquitos, and we really strafed it and did quite a bit of damage with cannon shell, of course, and there was not a shot fired at us. Anyway, coming back, I went over Corf Buren, K-A-U-F-B-U-R-E-N, Corf Buren, and that was operational. Anyway, we went right over the top of it, came around, and I had some cannon shells left. And I kept my finger on the trigger this time, and I used up one gun stopped firing, in fact, and I don't know whether it was out of ammunition or it just jammed, because they had a habit of jamming. Anyway, we strafed the plane, and it was very unpleasant of them. They shot back at us, but most of the traces went behind us. Anyway, we set the officers' mess alight and a couple of aeroplanes. And came back. I forget now whether I landed at Juvencourt. I don't think I did. I flew on to England. And that's when I experienced this new invention. It had been at Bradwool Bay for months and I hadn't done a thing about it. Nobody had. It was called FIDO. It was a fog a dispersant system. I don't know if you've heard of it, but the engineers built a series of pipes either side of the runway, well out, and in periods of heavy fog, these things could be ignited, and the fuel burn at that stage was avgas. And they used to use a colossal amount of fuel, and they'd heat up the atmosphere, and the fog would go up to about 200 feet. And Bomber Command had quite a few of them. We only had the one at Bradwool Bay, where I was based. And landing on Fido was quite an interesting experience. It was like flying into a huge incandescent bulb, because it's all reflective fog. And you'd pick out where you think the runway was, because you're able to sort of trace these fires, fly down, make sure you got your gear down, a bit of flap, and then fly a crosswind leg. And of course you'd go out into darkness, and you're only about 200-300 feet above ground level, and go downwind. You'd time yourself, and then turn on the base leg, and then when you think that time was equivalent to your crosswind leg, you turn left again. Well, the first time I missed out, I was way out to hell. And the second time I wasn't much better. But I'd been flying instruments all night, about 6 hours of it. And I was getting knackered. I was tired. And anyway, I came around the corner and there was a runway out there. I said to my navigator, I'll make it. I was going too fast anyway. Power off, poor bloody Merlins. Power off, pop, 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 as they used to go. And I had full flap down. I didn't forget that. The gear was down locked, 3 greens. And I said, you better hold on your horses, because it's going to be a fast landing. And by God, it was too. I went on the strip like a rocket. I virtually pushed it on and went for the anchors. And the anchors were pneumatic brakes. And God, you could have toasted bread on the brake drums when I finished. I finished right at the end of the runway. And at debriefing, I smoked in those days. I smoked 2 Pall Mall cigarettes, and they were bloody coffin nails about that long. And we used to get them from Kodak House in Kingsway, where the Australian headquarters were. On the cheap, of course. Everything was on the cheap. And I was glad to get to bed that night. A long night. Anyway, within about 2 weeks, peace was declared, and the rest is history.